Streaming now live on YouTube.
Dear participants and honorable guests, we would like to ask everyone to turn on your cameras and turn off your microphones.
The House shall now come to order. Dear participants, we welcome you at the opening ceremony of the 10th annual session of Budapest International Model United Nations. Before we start our program today, we would like to pay our respects to those who have lost their lives to COVID-19. Let us have a minute of silence for the nearly 3 million people whom we have lost.
The pandemic has also left millions extremely vulnerable and exposed to the effects of COVID-19. According to the World Bank, by 2030, the global poverty rate could be as high as 7% worldwide. In the sub-Saharan region, hundreds of children are at risk of death from hunger, following the impacts of COVID-19 every day. The World Economic Forum predicts that it will now take 136 years to reach gender equality due to the excessive burden on women created by the pandemic.
We hope that many of you will strive to achieve change, because the effects of the pandemic will be unpredictable and long-standing. Therefore, we would like to extend our gratitude to Mr. Laszlo Mos, Headmaster of Eötvös József Secondary School, Ms. Valeria Eszes, Deputy Headmaster of Eötvös József Secondary School, and Ms. Tünde Holik, Responsible Teacher of BIMUN 21, along with Mr. Joseph Simon and Mr. Laszlo Tisza for their support.
Last but not least, we would like to thank all the student organizers for giving us the platform to create a meaningful dialogue aimed at resolving today's problems for a better future and raising leaders in the process.
We'll start the opening ceremony with a roll call. If you hear your country's name, ambassadors, please say present. the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Please say present. The Commonwealth of Australia.
Present.
Thank you. Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Federal Republic of Brazil.
Present.
Thank you. Ethiopia.
Present.
Germany. Nigeria.
Present.
Thank you. The French Republic.
Present.
Thank you. Hungary.
Present.
Thank you. The Islamic Republic of Iran.
Present.
Thank you. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Present.
Thank you. Japan. Kingdom of Belgium.
Present.
Thank you. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Sweden.
Present.
Thank you. People's Republic of China.
Present.
The Republic of India.
Present.
Present.
The Republic of Korea.
Present.
Present.
Thank you. The Republic of South Africa. The Republic of Turkey.
Present.
Thank you. The Russian Federation.
Present.
The Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The State of Israel. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Present.
Thank you. And the United States of America.
Present.
Thank you.
Now we would like to briefly outline the schedule of today's program. First of all, the Secretary General of our conference, His Excellency Mr. Ilish Katana, is going to deliver his opening speech.
Following him, Her Excellency Ms. Zsuzsanna Horváth, Permanent Representative of Hungary to the UN's New York offices, will share her thoughts through a pre-made video.
Ensued by His Excellency Mr. Martin Naseki, Director of the United Nations Information Service in Vienna.
After him, the House is going to be addressed through a welcome video by the head of the City Diplomacy Group of Budapest, Mr. David Korányi.
Last but not least, we are going to hear a speech by Mr. Balázs Kelemen, Hungarian Youth Delegate to the UN.
After him, we will be hearing a speech from Gábor Kálpár-Fronius, Vice Mayor of Budapest.
And then we will hear a speech from Mr. Adam Bágyi, Second Chancellor at the Hungarian Embassy in the Netherlands and the founder of BIMUN.
After the keynote speakers, we're going to introduce the committee chairs and rapporteurs, and then listen to the speeches of the student ambassadors.
Now, I would like to invite the Secretary General of the 10th session of Budapest International Model United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Ilish Katana, to approach the floor and deliver his opening speech to the House. Mr. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Most esteemed President of the General Assembly, most esteemed Deputy President of the General Assembly, honorable guest speakers, dear fellow organizers, dear delegates, chairs, reporters, dear staff, guests, ladies and gentlemen. When we started organizing this year's BIMUN, we planned a lot of things otherwise. You can only imagine how hard it is for me as the Secretary General of this conference to see that no single participant is here in person in front of me in the town hall of Budapest. How hard it is for me to see empty chairs, an empty hall, and an empty lifeless camera looking directly at me. For the last more than 6 months, I have been hoping that the circumstances would allow at least some limited form of personal contact in our work to protect the globalized world in crisis. But the world did not allow for us to. The pandemic situation did not allow for us to. I can clearly remember that day around a month ago in early March when I sat at home in the evening at an online Zoom meeting with members of the organizer team, making a final decision on the format of this year's Budapest International Model United Nations. I believe I can speak in the name of all those that have been there. It was a hard night. But I realized later on that no matter how far we are from each other, we can still feel very close in our hearts. The fact that this BIMUN is held online does not mean that it must be bad, so to say. We cannot give up hope in a month prior to the conference, and so did we not. I realize that it is not our moment or a place, whether we are at the school or at home, that really matters. I realize that it is in our mind where ideas and solutions are born. I realize that it is in our spirit how we work and cooperate with each other. It is in our heart where we form bonds and connections, and it is in our soul when we can really feel the conference. And now I realize that even if no one sits on the other side of this house, more than 130 of us are sitting in our homes, paying attention to the same words and preparing for the same work together. Now I realize that when I look into the lens of this camera, our eyes meet over and over again. You are not really that far anymore. I would like to express my appreciation and my gladness that you decided to stay. You decided to stay despite all the difficulties that you may be facing right now. For example, the online education that compelled us to rethink and reorganize not only our learning strategies, but also our everyday life. The extra burdens the pandemic may place on you, be it stress, financials, private issues, or anything else. You need to know that it is so precious that in the face of all these, you decided to stay and spend the upcoming days working together and taking on the challenges of the globalized world in crisis. Because it is not only our own problems that shadow these times. If we look around, we can clearly see more stress, more tensions around us, tensions on the streets, in the media, and in the surrounding world. The globalized world is in crisis. An infectious disease has spread throughout the continents, taking millions of lives and infecting many more. Governments have limited our freedoms in our daily lives to protect us, which then took away job opportunities from people. Many people lack finance and basic needs now, and trust is broken down in democratic leadership and the status quo. Health crisis quickly became an economic one, which then resulted in social and political turmoil. In the eyes of many, even tomorrow is uncertain. This is why we, the organizers, decided to build an imaginary crisis situation on an existing one. It is very important that we maintain our critical thinking with regard to our present and our future in the face of uncertainty. We, the curious and enthusiastic students of today, and the leaders and innovators of tomorrow, must be conscious of the problems that are existing in our world that we share together. To see that the economic crisis takes ever more jobs on a global scale is important. To see that tensions, social unrest, and extremism is on the rise, including the developed and the developing world. To see conflicts unresolved, countries in debt and on the verge of collapse, and human rights being systemically violated. All of these may sound hopeless. I believe that it is important that we, as the leaders of tomorrow, recognize and understand the problems. However, we should also move one step further, to step up and proactively contribute to solving these issues. We may not be the ones who will change the world, but change starts with us. Our generation is the one that is going to live in a so-called post-COVID world with all its benefits and newborn issues. And the leaders of this generation shall be the one that takes the role of discussing these issues and their possible solutions. It gives me hope to see that you are the leaders of this generation. As Winston Churchill wrote, we are still masters of our fate. We are still captains of our souls. I wish you all a successful and enjoyable 4 days of debate. And I wish you a memorable conference overall. With that being said, I officially open the 10th anniversary session of Budapest International Model United Nations. Thank you for your kind attention. I yield the floor back to the presidency.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Now I would like to ask our IT manager, Mr. Márton Szamec, to play the welcoming video of Her Excellency Ms. Zsuzsanna Horváth, Permanent Representative of Hungary to the United Nations New York offices.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to address you today on the occasion. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to address you today on the occasion of the opening of the 10th Annual Budapest Model United Nations Conference. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to address you today on the occasion of the opening of the 10th Annual Budapest Model United Nations Conference. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak today. This conference is a testament, year after year, of the talent, commitment, and leadership of our young generation in Hungary and beyond. The agenda of the conference this year includes the most pressing concerns of today and truly reflect the matters that we have on our table at the United Nations. The COVID-19 pandemic turned our societies, economies, and everyday lives upside down, and the importance of cooperation has never been so obvious than nowadays. Indeed, we see history in the making, and we are charting new territories by every step of the way. Science and medical innovation are finally taking their long-neglected place in international affairs. But we are far from making healthcare and vaccines accessible in all corners of the world. And to do so, a lot of complex efforts must be taken globally and locally. Moreover, the socio-economic implications of the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated existing inequalities and marginalized those who are already the farthest left behind. The following years will not only need to be about recovery, but also about building back better for a more inclusive, sustainable, and just society. I am confident that in the following days, you, the students and participants of the conference, will find inspiring and innovative solutions to these challenges. And by doing so, you will also inspire us to look at things from a different perspective and to think outside of the box. During your busy days ahead, I advise you to focus on not only what what you would like to achieve, but also on how you would like to achieve it. Convincing argumentation, respect for and understanding of the position of others, and the willingness to look for solutions that are acceptable to all are important skills in diplomacy. These skills can only be earned by experience, and this is exactly what you are here for. Dear participants, at the United Nations, we constantly underline the power of youth. In this regard, we work to ensure that the future generation grows up to take leadership, participate in decision and policy-making processes. I am convinced that you are these leaders, decision and policy makers, and I wish you all the best for the following days as much as in your future. I thank you.
Thank you. Now, please welcome His Excellency Mr. Martin Naserki, Director of the United Nations Information Service in Vienna. Mr. Naserki served as spokesperson for the Secretary General of the United Nations in New York from 2009 to 2014. Before that, he was spokesperson and head of press and public information at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Vienna, for more than 3 years. He had an extensive journalistic career at Thomson Reuters from 1982 to 2006, serving as bureau chief, news and television, both in Moscow and Seoul. Prior postings also included assignments in London, East Berlin, and The Hague. His Excellency has the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning from Vienna. It's a pleasure to join you at the 10th Budapest International Model United Nations Conference. I think we'd all rather be meeting in person, but I'm really glad to join you online. And I really commend you also for this wonderful gesture at the beginning to spare a moment to think about all those lives lost and lives changed in many, many ways. And we really appreciate our close cooperation with BIMUN. And as you've heard also from the ambassador and in the great speech by your Secretary General, you really are making important topics more tangible, and you continue to be a source of great ideas. And so I'd like to commend all of you, 130 delegates from 4 different countries, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, and Slovenia, for your dedication and for really preparing thoroughly. I can see that and I can hear it. And I'd also like to thank everyone who has helped organize this event in these tricky times. And I imagined exactly what it must have been like when you had to take that decision, Secretary General, with your team on whether to, in what format to go ahead. And that's the kind of decision that's being taken in the United Nations too. And I've been in that position with other colleagues to take such decisions, including quite recently. It's painful, but it also, as you pointed out, it shows the great resilience and flexibility and versatility that there is in your lives and in the United Nations too. I think it's really terrific that you chose as your theme the globalized world in crisis and the socio-political consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been in complete havoc for more than a year now. COVID-19 has, if you like, x-rayed the world, exposing deep fissures and fragilities. And those vulnerabilities go well beyond the pandemic and public health. As you've also heard, many accomplishments of recent years were reversed. Extreme poverty is now back up to levels not seen in a generation. 500 million jobs are gone. Inequalities are widening. And yes, I think it's important, science has succeeded. And also, I think really significantly, we've seen great kindness around the world. But solidarity seems to be failing us now, arguably when we need it most. Vaccines are reaching a handful of countries quickly, while the poorest countries have almost none. And on top of this, human rights are under assault worldwide. So we really need to get back on track in fighting inequality, hunger, and the war on nature. And we must place human rights at the center of all we do. 2020 brought us tragedy, it brought us peril. 2021 must be that year to get back on track with hope and with solidarity. And with a fast-moving pandemic, no one is safe unless everyone is safe. The World Health Organization and other partners are pushing for global equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines. And the good news is more than 100 countries have now been reached, and the UN is playing a leading role in that. But of course, much more remains to be done in this area. Now, if we speak about access to COVID-19 vaccines, access to trusted and science-based information is also important in fighting the pandemic. We've all seen the disinformation, the misinformation out there on social media and elsewhere. You can support the cause of trying to have access to trusted and science-based information by joining our campaigns on social media with the hashtags #OnlyTogether, and it's possible. Or you can join our verified initiative that encourages us to check what we share online, really to take a pause before you share something on one of your social media platforms. You heard from the permanent representative of Hungary in New York just now about the importance in diplomacy of being able to listen to others, and I'd like to reiterate that too. During your negotiations, arguably the toughest challenge will be reaching a consensus. One needs to be patient and to listen carefully, especially online. And I'd like to praise you again for continuing with this really important Model United Nations Conference, BIMUN, in its 10th year, so that you can really continue to look at how you can contribute. You have so many ideas. You're so full of dynamism and enthusiasm, and being able to contain and channel that enthusiasm to come out with some fantastic ideas of how we can really work in this recovery period. I think that's so important. And multilateralism, staying on the diplomatic theme, is absolutely central to our recovery. The countries you represent have adapted well to working in a virtual or hybrid setting. I've seen this for myself, most recently, for example, the Kyoto Crime Congress just last month was supposed to be a major event in Japan with hundreds and hundreds of people present. In the end, very few people were physically present, but there were hundreds, indeed thousands, participating online, so in a hybrid format. It can be done, and you're proving this again. And I have no doubt that you will be using this format as you really well as you elaborate ideas on how we can really build back better and make sure that those who've been left furthest behind, who are already far behind, can really be brought along, and that we keep in mind at all times the Sustainable Development Goals. This is really our blueprint for recovery. We already have it, and those goals need to be achieved by 2030. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as you go through these next days. I'm wishing you every success over those coming 4 days. Enjoy BIMUN 2021. And if we all work together, we'll meet at BIMUN 2022 in person. I really look forward to that. Have great fun. And thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nserki. Now we're going to play a video message from Mr. David Korányi, head of the City Diplomacy Group, Budapest. He served as an Undersecretary of State and Chief Foreign Policy and National Security Advisor to Prime Minister of Hungary, Gordon Bajnai. He was previously the Director of Atlantic Council's Energy Diplomacy Initiative. He also worked in the European Parliament as Foreign Policy Advisor and Cabinet of a Hungarian MEP beginning in 2004. He is a policy advisor to the United Nations on sustainable energy.
Distinguished guests, students, organizers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm more than delighted for this opportunity to deliver welcome remarks at BIMUN 2021. I feel particularly attached to the Model United Nations as a former UN model participant myself, and due to my role as Sustainable Energy Policy Advisor at the United Nations. 2 years ago, I also had the pleasure to attend the 2019 US National Model United Nations Conference as a speaker, where I had many very inspiring discussions. I hope that despite the virtual format, all of you will get to experience this as well over the next couple of days. As I pointed out in a recent article I wrote for the European Council on Foreign Relations, the importance of direct city-to-city collaborations as well as city networks are growing more and more important. Cities worldwide are rising to jointly tackle global challenges such as climate change, immigration, growing inequality, intolerance, and the COVID-19 pandemic. We are cooperating in unprecedented ways, pooling resources and exchanging ideas and best practices. Since October 2019, Budapest has been pursuing an ambitious city diplomacy strategy. We aim to strengthen the city's global presence and attractiveness at the regional, European, and global levels. Budapest has built close working relationships with key EU institutions and numerous city, regional, and national governments, as well as embassies. We have strived to make the voice of cities heard, represent our citizens' interest, and thus launched a pan-European urban campaign aimed at providing regional and local authorities direct access to funding from the European Union. We put a strong focus on filling our sister city network with more content, and we are proactively pursuing accession to strategically important city networks, such as the elite C40 group fighting climate change. The Pact of Free Cities initiative, launched by the Visegrad 4 capitals in December 2019, aims to promote democratic values and the rule of law. As we plan to open the pact to cities from outside the region, in Europe and beyond, we are actively recruiting new member cities. By organizing the annual Budapest Forum on Sustainable Democracies, scheduled first for September 2021, Budapest is striving to become an intellectual center, contributing to the discussions on how to rebuild and reinforce democratic resilience. The competitiveness of major cities and the quality of life of their citizens are determined by their international embeddedness. By conceptualizing Budapest Global, an innovative partnership organization, we aim to enhance the city's knowledge-based economic possibilities in a systematic manner, involving the corporate sector, knowledge institutions, expats, and the Hungarian diaspora. Last but not least, we consider the training of next-generation city diplomats particularly important. In order to make sure that our work rests on sustainable footings, we established the Budapest Academy of City Diplomacy in October 2020, led by former Foreign Minister Péter Balázs. The Academy aims to provide an introduction to university students as well as recent graduates to city diplomacy in its broader context. I encourage you all to apply for our next semester starting this September. It has been a great pleasure to see the success of BIMUN events for over 10 years now, providing a formative experience to hundreds of students each year and giving you the chance to learn how to debate and negotiate international issues. I hope that besides learning a lot, you will also enjoy yourselves and build valuable connections. I wish you all a great conference. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you so much for your excellent speech, Mr. Korányi. The presidency would now like to invite Mr. Balázs Kelemen, Hungarian youth delegate to the UN, to approach the floor and share his thoughts with our participants. You have the floor, Mr. Kelemen.
Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, dear participants. First of all, let me express my deepest appreciation for you to taking your time and energy to participate in this conference, even in an online format. You are truly amazing, and I believe that I can say it on behalf of my colleagues working at the United Nations, that we desperately need and admire your work and contribution. Furthermore, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage you to carry on with your objectives, dreams, and goals during, but also beyond this conference. Fellow delegates, for the outside world, we might seem as children who are spoiled enough and who are arrogant enough to believe that they can solve the unsolvable. I imagine that for the people who have never taken part in Model United Nations conferences, the whole activity could seem like an excuse for travel. Yet here we are today, proving that Model United Nations for us are about professional development, networking, and making like-minded friends. And also, it is about the important love and dedication we all share towards the values and goals of the United Nations. However, if we truly want to become diplomats for good, we cannot only make friends with the like-minded, but we must engage the skeptical ones. We cannot only admire the goals of the United Nations, but we must become the agents of change ourselves. As I look back at my very first Model United Nations conference, I remember excitement, curiosity, but also doubt and some fear from failure. I remember I paid attention to every single detail, so I get to learn as much as possible. Yet at the time, I knew very little about how much that one conference will shape my future, and I understood very little about the true importance of the activities we did. Today, as we look around the world, we see crisis, division, and many other challenges that are seemingly unsolvable. As a result, time to time, we might feel anxious, hopeless, or too small to make an impact. But you should always remember, and in fact, you must always remember, that you are never alone and there are no such challenges we cannot overcome collectively. But for collective action, we need diplomats like you to bridge the gaps between peoples and nations. I believe that by participating at today's conference, you took the first step to become the guardians of the values of the United Nations. And if we take another step and we implement action for the greater good, then I know we can achieve peace and sustainability. So in this spirit, I wish you good luck and good connection for this conference and also for your journey beyond to achieve greatness. I wish to thank the organizers. You are doing an excellent job, and I'm quite excited to listen to the forthcoming speeches of the students specifically. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kellerman, for your kind words. Now we would like to introduce Mr. Gábor Kálpár-Fornős, Deputy Mayor of Budapest. He graduated as a historian and then worked in the field of financial informatics for a quarter of a century as a company manager and project manager. As Deputy Mayor, the issues of livable public spaces, participation, transparency, and innovation are of utmost importance to him. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and it is a great honor for me to speak at such an important conference. Conferences like this, simulating different negotiations, have a great past in the United States and Western Europe, and it is very good, and it can be seen in Hungarian public life that for instance, BIMUN has a past already in Hungary as well. So students who are interested in public life, international organizations can actually develop their capabilities and their readiness to debate. It is especially, it makes me especially very happy that it is not only university students, but also high school students who are showing more and more interest. And in this way, also those people can have experience in this field who are not definitely orienting themselves in the direction of actually doing politics or entering the world of diplomacy, but are only in general interested in public problems. It may sound as a commonplace that today, when politics is oftentimes reduced to the most awful commonplaces, to the repetition of slogans, of very calculatable communication panels, it is very difficult to maintain the sense and ability to debate for those who actually are trying to shape processes in a meaningful way. And so it is a very good thing that people get together on a conference like your excellent conference and try to debate, raising meaningful arguments and to simulate the solution of problems which might not have easy solutions, and where it is very difficult to reach a compromise. And in doing this, you are actually doing no less than preserving the ability of the world to try to solve problems in a meaningful manner, listening to each other, trying to reach compromises, which is something that is indispensable in order that the next generations can also live in a free, more peaceful, and world with a higher level of democracy. And as a closing remark, for my personal experience, I have never participated at a BIMUN conference, and I quite feel this. And looking at the people younger than me, coming from generations who have participated in conferences like this, their ability to debate is very enviable. So I wish you all a good conference and a lot of learning in the forthcoming days. So enjoy yourself and work hard and take this task very seriously. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for your excellent speech, Mr. Karpafronius. Last but not least, please give a warm welcome to our very special guest speaker, Mr. Adam Badi, Second Chancellor at the Hungarian Embassy in the Netherlands and the founder of BIMUN. We would like to ask our IT manager, Mr. Marton Samets, to play the welcoming video of Mr. Adam Badi.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear friends of BIMUN. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this opening ceremony and giving me time to share my thoughts. I know previous speakers already shared their opinions about all the ongoing issues in the world of the pandemic and all the uncertainty of our world. I am especially happy that former Foreign Minister of Hungary, Professor János Martonyi, who has been the first patron of this conference in 2011, will also attend the conference at a later time and give a unique overview. I do not wish to approach all these issues from another perspective, but would like to draw your attention of my personal BIMUN story. 10 years ago, a group of enthusiastic people decided to dream big, to do something big, to do something they have never done before. 10 years ago, the very first edition of Budapest International Model United Nations had been organized. As a former student of the Eötvös József Secondary School, I had the pleasure to be part of this big dream. Whenever I remember back for those years, I still think it was one of the most exciting periods of my life. Not just because we were creating something new, but we also learned and experienced a lot. Our teachers believed in us, believed in our dream, and gave us the opportunity. Looking back to this, after serving already 8 years the Hungarian diplomacy, still think sometimes this can mean everything. I remember we were all very excited about the outcome of the conference. We didn't know what to expect, and especially we had no idea about the possible future of it. And today, we are all here together at the opening of the 10th edition of BIMUN. A group of very enthusiastic, smart, young students believed in their dreams, and despite all the circumstances, they didn't give up. Because they think this is important. And just to make it very clear for everyone, they are right. It is important. What does the 10th edition mean for us then? My answer is simple. A Model UN program, just like BIMUN, has much to offer at all levels. BIMUN gives values and creates platform for developing skills, building network, friendships, and collecting experiences. Things that can lead one's life in many directions. Or, just like I said before, gives opportunities. This is how I always saw this conference, a unique opportunity. It only depends on you how much you take out of it. And if I can give an advice, do your best to get the most. It is worth all the effort, always. 10 different editions of this conference brought together in Budapest thousands of international brave students, and with the program itself, hundreds of Hungarian students attended several international conferences worldwide. What does the 10th edition mean for me personally? Much proudness. I am very proud of my former high school, my teachers, all the organizers, and the participants of the last 10 years, and of course this year's secretariat, to make the 10 editions of BIMUN possible. And last but never the least, the 10th edition in this year has another special message for all the delegates. Never before a model UN has been organized in such way. We experience every single day all the insecurities of life, of a future that at this moment of time nobody can predict. But the world will be over this at one point. This is not the first and not the last pandemic. Hopefully we will also learn from this, and perhaps we will better understand what is really important in the world. The situation is still serious, in which there is a particular need for calm, restraint, patience, understanding, and, of course, encouragement. This is what I wish for all of you, besides having successful debates and an enjoyable time. Happy birthday, BIMUN, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Badi. Now we're going to introduce the committee chairs and their rapporteurs.
The chairpersons of the Disarmament and International Security Committee are Ms. Celia Irving and Mr. Mate Kadash, and their rapporteur is Mr. Daniel Ramel.
The presidents of the Economic and Social Council will be Mr. Ari Gardner and Mr. Benedek Nagy. Their work will be aided by their rapporteur, Mr. Mate Demeter.
The presidency of the Human Rights Council consists of Mr. Bence Kövesi, Mr. Csanad Váradi, and Mr. Otto Nagy, and their rapporteur, Ms. Eszter Szabó.
The presidents of the Social and Humanitarian Committee will be Ms. Dóra Olajos and Ms. Petra Paragi. They will be helped by Ms. Dorottya Busa.
The World Health Organization is presided over by Mr. András Földi and Mr. Zoltán Baka, whose work will be helped by their rapporteur, Ms. Yvette Luca-Molnár.
The Special Political and Decolonization Committee is going to be chaired by Mr. Áron Pécsi and Mr. Zsombor Levente Vakán. Their rapporteur will be Mr. Roland Domjan.
The presidents of the Security Council are Ms. Anna Sáránsky and Mr. Barnabás György Pintér. Their rapporteur will be Ms. Lilla Laura Kish.
Thank you for your attention. Now we will be holding a 10-minute break, after which we're going to listen to the speeches of the student ambassadors.
A quick information, you don't need to leave the Zoom call, you can just turn your cameras off. The House is now dismissed.
Dear delegates, we're back in session, so please turn your cameras on and your microphones off again. Now we will be hearing the student speeches, the speeches of the delegate ambassadors, and we will be starting with the Ambassador of the United States of America. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Honorable Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, President of the General Assembly, Deputy President of the General Assembly, dear organizers and fellow delegates. The past year has been a challenge like never before. Our whole perspective of our world, the way we look at our lives and our countries, took a sudden and unexpected turn. And we had to adapt to our new world quickly and without hesitation. The deadly pandemic, besides brutally taking its toll on millions of innocent people, challenged our ability to protect the Earth from human rights abuses and destabilized the world, which has already faced numerous problems in the past decade. The US has been no exception when it comes to these problems. The pandemic hit us extremely severely, and in its wake came a huge economic downturn with unemployment rates skyrocketing and the economy at its worst since the late 1920s. The rhetoric on the pandemic gave way to the rise of extremism, and it will take a great deal of work and commitment to remedy the damage caused by the virus. This is true to all member states, and unless we find common ground, it will be hard for us to overcome these issues. It is a great achievement, considering these circumstances, that we are able to gather here, albeit in an online form, to discuss and solve these plaguing issues. And for that, we must express our utter gratitude to the organizers of this conference. Without their devoted work and diligence, we would be unable to act unitedly against the problem we are up against. The recent year has also highlighted the challenges we are currently facing, such as climate change, poverty, inequality, and the rise of tensions. We believe that besides finding a solution to the pandemic and helping others to find solutions to this fatal disease, we must also do our best to take a greater stance on the issues brought to light by the rapid spread of the illness. For too long, some countries have tried to further their own goals instead of trying to solve the challenging problems of our world. We believe that it is finally time to come together, to lower the temperature, and to work together for our common goals. First, we must put an end to this pandemic and take measures in order to prevent a crisis of this magnitude from happening again. For this to happen, we must work together closely in order not just to develop, but also to distribute vaccines more effectively, helping the countries who do not have the financial means to control the virus. Our second goal on this conference is to ensure that the economic downturn caused by COVID can be reversed, not just in the USA, but all around the world, especially in developing countries. Similar to the package which President Biden recently signed into law, we must take firm action to help unemployment and income inequality be solved at the fullest possible extent. And last but not least, we must overcome the challenges caused and highlighted by the spread of coronavirus, which we have already stated earlier in our speech. These include the threat on democracy, the rise of extremism, and climate change. Our administration, our president, and our nation is hopeful that this turning point in our civilization is a barrier that we can overcome, a hurdle over which we can jump, and the start of a new era, one involving peace and cooperation instead of war and bickering, an era focused on the world, not just our own country's interests, an era of hope. There has been talk of this for years, even decades now, but only words do not solve the problem. We have to start transforming our message into action, because this crisis shows that we do not have much time to save the Earth as we know it. We have to act, and we have to act now. As a conclusion to our thoughts, we'd like to summarize our goals on this conference with a short but inspiring quote from the late President Kennedy, said in 1962 about the solution of the challenges to that decade. If not us, who? If not now, when? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Are you open to any points of information?
Any and all.
Are there any such in the House? Please raise your hands.
Seeing there is none, we suggest you yield the floor back to the presidency.
The floor is yielded.
Thank you. Now, the French Republic, you're recognized.
Thank you, Presidency. Dear Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, most esteemed Presidency, honorable delegates, distinguished chairs, friends, ladies and gentlemen, and staff. The French Republic is intent on creating a better future for ourselves, our children, and future generations. We come together as a global community in order to create a healthy world for everyone and use the power of a constructive discourse to create real and impactful change. Gathered here today at the 10th Annual BIMUN Conference, one of the best MUN conferences in Europe, are so many talented and motivated debaters whose wish it is to make this world a better place. In the next few days, we will tackle some important world problems. The past year has been very hard on all of us. The global coronavirus pandemic has been a part of our lives for over a year now, and it looks like it is here to stay. We will have to do our best to find a solution for this pandemic and end it as soon as possible. This global crisis unfortunately left us with dreadful socioeconomic consequences. The French economy plunged into a deep recession last year as the pandemic slashed total output by 8.3%. This marks our worst recession since the Second World War. All over the globe, many companies went out of business, the global tourism industry is crumbling, people lost their jobs, and many people, students and parents, are struggling with their mental health because of the problems this pandemic brought upon them. It seems like the world is slowly falling apart. But it is in our hands, in the hands of the youth, that we speak up about these things, help one another, and try to find solutions for a better world after Corona. Secondly, our delegation believes that the international community should try to reduce terrorist groups' regional hold, prevent further radicalization, and take determined military action against extremists. Last decade of 20th century marks the first notable rise in extremism in our country. Along with Islamic terrorism came the Islamophobia, which has now seen a new surge, especially amid the COVID-19 pandemic, having reached an all-time peak. The prevention of terrorism is not only important to protect our citizens, but is also a way to give them the feeling of safety and regain their belief in the government, which has, in many cases, been dwindling throughout the course of the epidemic. We stand behind the United Nations and its sometimes unappreciated but highly important ability to change something in the world we live in. Every single council has an important topic to discuss in the following days, and the ambassador of France can vouch for one thing. Our delegation is not easily intimidated. We are prepared to work hard for what we believe in and protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will fight for the upholding of agreements already settled upon to ensure equality in a world that is in need of stability. Moreover, we expect that if the international community works together with France's delegates in every committee, we would be glad to be a catalyst in unprecedented change in a rapidly changing world. As the famous proverb goes, actions say more than words. We're not here to just talk, we are here to contribute toward positive change in our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Are you open to points of information?
Yes.
Are there any in the House? Seeing there is none, we suggest you yield the floor back to the presidency.
We yield the floor back to the presidency.
Thank you.
Ambassador for the People's Republic of China, you've been recognized. The floor is yours.
Honorable Secretaries General, President of the General Assembly, fellow delegates, chairs, and most esteemed guests. The overarching theme for this year's conference is the globalized world in crisis. The delegation of China sees this as a vital talking point during these tumultuous times. As you know, the coronavirus has shifted our lives in ways that were never prognosticated. For more than a year now, a virulent, vicious virus has attacked our people and impacted the well-being of our citizens. Our countries have suffered enough. It is time to discuss transformation and growth. China was the first country to encounter the coronavirus. Luckily, our government acted swiftly, enforcing lockdown measures even before other countries actualized the virus's potential. Thus, we were able to stand back on our feet, mourn the dead, and innovate the future promptly. China supported most nations gathered here today in a variety of different ways this past year. Thanks to us, you are all closer to detecting the light at the end of the tunnel. We not only scattered masks, ventilators, and safety gear, but lately we mass-produced and distributed our own vaccine, helping to put an end to these trying times. China has been and will always be a globalized country. We are industrial and have trade routes all across the globe. Therefore, it is China's main priority to help all nations out of this hole that they fell into, not only to preserve innocent lives, but also to regrow the crucial economic relationships that have been buried so swiftly and unintentionally. As a UN member state, we are regularly reminded that we are not different but alike. We are all part of an extended, sometimes dysfunctional family of nations, striving to achieve the same goals and ambitions. We must not condemn others for the situations that we are in, but rather hold our arms out, embrace each other, and leave the virus's calamitous days behind us. At this conference, China hopes not only to take a step in the right direction, but a colossal leap. The longer we wait, the more people will die. The more we think about the future, the closer it gets. The more we help each other, the stronger we, the great big family, will get. There is no time to waste. From the bottom of our hearts, from the Great Wall to the Tibetan heights, we wish you all good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Are you open to any points of information?
Any and all.
Are there any such in the House? Please raise your hands. Seeing as there are none, please yield the floor back to the presidency.
So yielded.
Thank you.
Now we would like to call upon the ambassador to the Russian Federation to deliver his speech.
Honorable Secretaries Generals, Presidents of the General Assembly, Chairs, fellow delegates, distinguished guests. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, we left behind 500 years of history, but kept it in our souls. We entered an era of rapid development. Thus, these antique hearts beating the men and women of the modern world have come to create a mixed balance of old and novelty. This unique perspective is what our delegation is wishing to add to the conference. We further are looking for the establishment of international agreements in the open spirit of bipartisanship. In detail, first, we seek to acquire unity and endorse human rights even in the current situation, as we do not believe that the circumstances require the invocation of martial law and any such. Second, we have faith in one for all for one. Hence, we are ardent to have the less development economies. Third, the Federation of Russia values an efficient government and cooperation. Therefore, we are also supporting the prevention of the preparation of future countermeasures for all health crises. Our great nation does not negotiate with terrorists, and we shall not legitimize their inhuman grounds for destruction. Instead, we should take precautionary measures and tackle the rise of extremism fueled by global crises. We seek to make agreements in light of the motherland's capabilities, and we are open to the tremendous trade of crude oil and natural gas, both of which it is impossible for society to rebuild itself without. We believe in efficiency, and Russia, regardless of the opinion of certain large nations, is willing to work together with the United Nations to create agreements that benefit our citizens and humanity as a whole. As, with utmost respect, we believe in the efficiency of secular democracies such as ours, and we recommend all nations to put their law and government before any vain reasoning of race, gender, or belief. In summary, our government always prevails to be a leading navigator in the crisis. Therefore, we state that the reciprocal support and tender-hearted ally of governments parties is a must for global cooperation. This is why the delegation of the Russian Federation is encouraging all members of the House to work together in order to come to a consensus. As a pearl of Russian wisdom says, Beris druzo, ne budet gruzo. Together, there is no work too heavy.
Thank you so much for your speech. Does the delegate want to open themselves up to points of information?
The delegate is open to POIs from any and all.
Thank you. Are there any such in the House? USA, followed by the UK.
Thank you for your speech, Delegate. We heard the word law very often in the delegate of Russia's speech. Doesn't the delegate think that it is a bit hypocritical to talk about law when currently Alexei Navalny is in a detainment camp and denied basic health care? We think it's quite hypocritical to talk about law under these circumstances.
Thank you for a fine question, Delegate. However, as our 1993 Constitution declares, Russia is a democratic, federal, and law-based state, and we believe that our internal politics are not a matter of the United Nations, and we are honored by your high interest in our internal politics. However, we believe that we can discuss this out of, however, it is not a matter of today's session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. UK, you've been recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for that fine speech, Ambassador. We couldn't help but notice that the ambassador put a lot of stress on cooperation and counterterrorism, two values that the UK obviously has at heart. We would, however, like to ask the ambassador how they think the recent threats of Russia in direct support of a rebel, some can even say terrorist group in eastern Ukraine, are in this spirit of counterterrorism and cooperation.
Thank you for a fine question again, Delegate. However, as you know, Russia has a strict no negotiation policy with terrorism and terrorists. Therefore, we do not consider them to be a terrorist group. And in case you do, and in case you believe, then we would like to remind you that they are not recognized by the United Nations as a terrorist group. And in case they go against some countries' values and some countries' interests in politics, they still are not a threat to the international community and nor our nation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other points of information in the House? Seeing there is none, we suggest yielding the floor back to the presidency.
The floor is yielded.
Thank you. Ambassador to the United States of America, please lower your hand. Thank you.
Ambassador for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Honorable Secretaries General and Presidents of the General Assembly, most esteemed delegates and guests. It is with our deepest sorrow and utmost regret that duty dictates we relate to all. 487. 487 harrowing days since the SARS-CoV-2 virus first appeared in a human patient. 434 since it was declared a public health emergency, a pandemic 393. Today, it is to that we must look back, as we are distanced and digital. To these processes that, the delegate thinks it no exaggeration to state, changed the world as we knew it, be it through questions of healthcare, economic recession, international cooperation, equity, or discrimination. During this period, the United Kingdom has borne testament to the trials and tribulations we have all faced. 4 million citizens infected, 2 national lockdowns, sharp economic downturn. The symptoms of this virus have been felt by all. Yet, it is also in these trying times that the United Kingdom has witnessed icons of hope, such as the late Sir Thomas More, played host to the development of one of the world's premier vaccines in the fight against coronavirus, and effectuated one of the most successful vaccination campaigns to date. It is these bittersweet victories we now have to show. That said, let us ask ourselves, why are we gathered here? Is it to dwell on the past? Surely not. Indeed, it is in the spirit of ensuring the future that the delegate does now presume to impose upon this House's most valued time. It is to remedy the damage caused to the nations and peoples of the entire world, to rectify any wrongs inflicted, and to mitigate as best we can the impact of these 487 days. In keeping with the spirit, as consistently attested to by countless endeavors, amongst which we are sure delegates do recall the substantial contributions made to UNICEF's COVAX program by the British government, the United Kingdom resolves to strive for international dialogue and cooperation in maintaining its firm commitment to human rights and global security, combating extremism, and ensuring a global economic recovery with equitable conditions for all. We believe that the exceptional forum provided by the Budapest International and UN will prove to be the vehicle through which we may effectively organize recuperation worldwide and guarantee that our fortuitous position be a source of aid for the international community we hold an unwavering responsibility to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Are you open to any points of information?
Any and all.
Are there any such in the House? Please raise your hands. Seeing as there are none, please yield the floor back to the Presidency, Ambassador.
So yielded.
Thank you.
Now, please, the Islamic Republic of Iran, you have the floor.
Honorable Secretaries General, Presidents of the General Assembly, dear Chair, fellow delegates, dear guests. Iran believes that the upcoming session is utmost of importance, and we hope that we could find the best solutions for all of us in these challenging times. We are in this together. We have to face huge difficulties, not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the poverty and economic problems. The developed Western countries had failed to provide assistance to developing countries. They did not provide substantive help, neither economically nor epidemiologically. But even so, Iran is open for cooperation. The financial problems in our country occurred because of the sanctions of the United States of America. Ex-President Donald Trump said that Iran has broken the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and Iran is making nuclear weapons, so he limited the trade with the country. This led to an increase in poverty and caused huge economic problems in Iran. President Joe Biden has promised to move to rejoin the JCPOA with Iran, however, failed to take the right steps that would be necessary for the procedure. We want to speed up this procedure to ensure the safety of our citizens and to ensure the maintenance of international peace and security. We ask all member states of the United Nations to promote the efforts of one another in order to overcome the coronavirus pandemic and to refuse to enact any trade sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We hope that not only our problems could be solved, but the international community can show solidarity and justice in the upcoming days. Thank you.
To any points of information?
No.
Now we suggest you yield the floor back to the Presidency.
The floor is yielded.
Thank you.
The Ambassador for the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, you have the floor.
Honorable Secretaries General and Presidents of the General Assembly, honorable organizers and members of the Secretariat, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy needs support, and the best support for democracy comes from other democracies, once said Benazir Bhutto, the former Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Nothing has proven that to be more true than the COVID-19 pandemic we are currently facing. While the entire world is suffering from the disastrous consequences of the pandemic, developing countries, including Pakistan, have been hit the hardest. Our economy depends heavily on exports, foreign investments, and rents. Millions of people have been pushed into poverty, and millions of jobs have been lost. At this point, Pakistan can no longer afford a large-scale lockdown, as this would cause mass starvation. Also, the unequal vaccine distribution is making it impossible to successfully tackle the pandemic. At this critical time in history, when it is vital for nations to stand united, Pakistan calls for global cooperation as it is the only option we have to keep whole economies from collapsing and to prevent millions of unnecessary deaths. An immediate global response is crucial, a response with compassion for the underdeveloped parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador. Are you open to any points of information?
Yes, we are.
Are there any such in the House? Please raise your hand. Seeing as there are none, please yield the floor back to the Presidency.
The floor is yielded.
Thank you.
Dear delegates, we would like to urge everyone to ask POIs because this way we can create a meaningful dialogue. Now we would like to call upon the Ambassador to the Republic of Korea to deliver their opening speech.
Thank you, first of all, to the Ambassador of Pakistan for your speech. Honorable Secretaries General, dear President of the General Assembly, most distinguished guests and esteemed delegates, it is an honor to represent the Republic of Korea in this annual Budapest International Model United Nations Conference 2021. The Republic of to find solutions for issues regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, which is seen as deeply concerning. In this special time, we find it truly important to come together to jointly battle this pandemic. This is the responsibility that it is necessary to cooperate and trade knowledge with one another, since the pandemic is not an issue that can be battled by any nation on its own. It is the time to overcome hurdles and to put differences aside for the benefit of all. As the Republic of Korea has been a role model for many in handling the spread of the coronavirus, it looks forward to sharing its measures so that all, especially less fortunate countries, can recover from the pandemic as quickly as possible. We must work together to reinstate health and prosperity for all and to find better ways to be prepared for similar situations in the future. As a popular Korean proverb says, if you don't walk today, you must run tomorrow. Let us all start walking with one another. The Republic of Korea is looking forward to a fruitful debate and is confident that this conference will result in effective resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Are you open to any points of information?
Any and all.
Are there any such in the House? Seeing there is none, please yield the floor back to the Presidency.
So yield it.
Thank you.
Now we will call upon the Ambassador to the Republic of Turkey to deliver their speech. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you for all the ambassadors and their speeches. Honorable Secretaries General, President of the General Assembly, dear guests and esteemed delegates. It is an honor to present the Republic of Turkey at this annual Budapest International Model United Nations Conference 2021. The delegation of Turkey is most eager to find resolutions to many of the issues concerning the COVID-19 pandemic in the upcoming days. The Republic of Turkey is utterly concerned about the current global coronavirus crisis and its effects on all nations. We must emphasize that it is essential to listen to national and international scientists' expertise to ensure the well-being and health of as many people as possible. Turkey is struggling with the effects of this crisis equally as every other nation, with the Turkish economy and its tourism sector impacted the most. We would like to highlight the importance and inevitability of international support, cohesion, and solidarity. The Republic of Turkey expects to see countries carry out acts of nobility to help and support each other instead of viewing vaccination development and medical supply distribution as a field of competition. As one of our nation's fathers, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, once said, "The Turkish nation's character is noble, the Turkish nation is industrious, the Turkish nation is intelligent." The Republic of Turkey is convinced that the Turkish ambition, intelligence, and nobility embedded in our country's foundation will aid the tackling of this crisis, especially when combining it with the remarkable willpower and determination of the multilateral United Nations organization. Turkey is convinced that this conference is going to result in effective solutions, minimizing the deeply concerning impacts COVID-19 has on our humanity, society, politics, and economy. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador. Are you open to any points of information?
Yes.
Are there any such in the House? Please raise your hands. Seeing that there are none, please yield the floor back to the presidency.
The floor is yielded.
Thank you.
Now, we would like to also thank the City of Budapest for providing the venue for the opening ceremony. We would like to play a video about the City of Budapest. Thank you so much. We would like to express our sorrow because today those delegates who are from abroad cannot see the city of Budapest, but we sincerely hope that next year you will get the opportunity to visit Budapest in person. Now, with that, we would like to announce that the House is now dismissed.
Thank you.